People always ask how I balance my family life with 400 shows a year. I'm just doing what I love with the people I love. It's my magic life.
I like Wes Iseli. I like everything about him.
All right. This week we have Dr. Ray and Jean Kadkhodaian on the podcast. They are, well, I'll let them introduce themselves. Everybody, it's Dr. Ray and Jean. What's up, guys? How are you?
Good.
How are you guys? Long time no see, right?
We just did a podcast with you guys. How long ago was that? Like 3 days ago?
No, it was a little bit.
So what happened was we did the podcast, and then I'm like, hey, I do have this opening for non-Magic, non-Natalie and I podcast. Would you guys be able to make it work? And it seemed like it was way far out. And then that episode of us on your podcast just came out last night. I just watched it. So it feels like
you just
I just hung out with you for an hour and a half. So tell everybody who you guys are and what you do for a living, and we'll get into it.
So for the past 25 years now, we have been working with couples, primarily helping them navigate the challenges of relationships. And we developed our own model in working with couples called Couple Synergy, which is a 90-day program for couples. We have a clinic in the Chicagoland area. We have opened up now a new clinic or new branch out here in Colorado where we live. And we are really happy to bring our message to the world.
So everything says Dr. Ray and Jean. Is Miss Jean a doctor as well?
No, I have a master's degree. He has the doctorate.
Gotcha.
That's pretty close. That's pretty close. So let's get started way back. How did you guys meet?
That's a really good story. We have two different stories, by the way.
Is that because one's made up?
His started sooner than mine.
Oh, okay. All right, there you go. All right.
Go ahead.
So I was interviewing for a position at a community mental health center, and I was in the front area of the center, talking to my soon to be boss, and I see Jean walking down the far hallway, and I noticed her, and I was like, wow, she's really cute. And then she walked up, and then my boss introduced me to her at that time. So I remember that as being the first time that we met. But Jean doesn't remember that.
So obviously he got the job, and my job was split between two positions, and part of it was we had common clients, and we didn't look so good on paper. He was 24, I was 30 with a 10-year-old. So we would talk a lot after work, and I thought he was going to ask me out, and he never did. So then I kind of put him in the friends category. And then we actually met over a fish tank. So I had fish tanks my whole life. And I said, when I buy a place, I'm going to get a saltwater tank. And so my son and I had moved like every year because, rent and it goes up. So you got to always move around. So like 10 different times. And then I bought a condo right before I met him. And I got this saltwater tank. And he wrote a little note in my box and said, when are you going to let me come and check out your cool fish tank? And he came over that night and kind of didn't leave.
Nice. Yep. That's how you know it's going to work, when they don't leave. That's what happened with us. I never left.
Right.
So
that's sweet.
You were in Chicagoland area, though, right? That's what that's what it was, with the rent and the moving around and everything. I couldn't imagine how much rent was and going up like crazy. Yeah.
So we were both born and raised in the Chicagoland area, and so never really seen any other part of the country. I mean, I did go to college in Nebraska, but other than that, we lived our entire lives in the Chicago area, there in the suburbs.
Yeah, I have 8 siblings, so I did run away and join the Army when I was 18. So that was how I got out. But then, having a kid, you have to stay wherever the dad is. So we were both kind of stuck there, even though we wanted to leave. As soon as on our honeymoon, we decided we were going to leave. And that was, took us 25 years to actually get out here before we left.
And when I met her, I was dating, kind of casually dating I had, gotten out of a pretty traumatic long-term relationship at that time. So I wasn't really looking for any type of commitment, but, starting a relationship with her was very different because, it's not just, it can't just be a casual relationship. There's a child involved. And so, really had to kind of look at my priorities in life and what was really important, and decided that, the casual dating life kind of thing wasn't at that point.
Yeah, he was only 14 years older than our son. So it was a big life switch for you.
Huge life
You went
switch.
from like college life to being an Insta dad. In fact, we broke up over it once, and then you took the weekend and thought about it, and then you're like, I got to see where this goes, and here we are.
Did you guys break up because they wouldn't share the controller for the Nintendo? They were both kids in the other room.
Oh my God, he exposed him to too much Nintendo. I was like, hey, you can't be doing that.
So did you guys end up having any kids of your own together?
We did, yes. We got married, I don't know how long it was, about less than a year after we met, right?
We started dating February 21st. We got married February 14th the following year.
Mm-hmm.
And our son was born in August.
Yeah.
Yep. And he just got married in Vienna in November. So both our kids are married. Our older son has a daughter, so we're grandparents.
Yep. And they both are in the DC area, and we're halfway across the country.
Well, and I told you in your podcast, when you guys are there, you look us up and we'll get you tickets to a show. We want to hang out with you.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So how long have you guys been working as a couple doing this job? How did that start? Because you guys were doing something totally different.
Yeah, we were working in, as I said, community mental health. I worked also in the hospital system and residential treatment areas. Primarily in the beginning, our focus wasn't on working with couples. But what would happen in the field of mental health is that often you were just thrown in front of a couple or thrown in front of a family with no training, and you were just told to do counseling with them. And so that's why a lot of couples work or couples therapists and family therapists, they kind of fail, and the therapy fails is because they don't have that training, and they don't have specific considerations when working with two or more people.
Yeah, it's sort of like what we've learned over the years of doing this is, if you want to dance, you can do what you want. But if you want to dance with another person, you got to find some structure and, ways to communicate differently so you can do that. And when we were thrown in with these families or couples, it was horrible. You'd end up refereeing. And we thought, what, there's got to be a better way. It's not productive. People leave feeling bad. You feel bad. Neither one of us was happy doing that, but we were really passionate about relationships, and both of us were before we met, and figuring out our own bad relationships from our, fun dating years. And we thought, what, let's figure out a better way. And this was in 2002. And I quit my full-time job, and we opened up a company, The Lighthouse, which still exists today. You continued to work. So, just to bridge that gap, because we didn't have any clients yet, and we grew it from there. And, in the beginning too, we were figuring it out. I think we've had more fights about our couples than the couples themselves had. Just in trying to understand, how do you understand, what happens in traditional counseling? There's one therapist and two people. Someone's picking a side. It just happens. Well, we can't pick a side because we each have our own. So we have to fight for this couple to make it, or at least to make a good decision about what they need to do. And so we would have to, because, you hear something, there's his side, her side, and something else that's truth. Perception. I don't even know if it's truth, but it's perception, right? We've never met any couple or family that you would swear they live in a different house. Their perceptions of what's going on is so complicated. And so we had to continue to learn, like, that can't be what's the important thing. If you don't like that someone leaves their shoes in the living room, the answer isn't move your shoes. It's, why does this bother you? And how do you get there, or why aren't it's so much more complicated things. And what we've created over that last 25 years is, it's so awesome because we know it works. Because on our podcast, we've podcasted couples we worked with 15 years ago, and they still say we're still practicing the things you taught us. We're still doing it. And so that's one thing with traditional marriage counseling. There's a 2-year attrition rate. People behave for a bit and then they go back to their old ways. And in the model that we've learned and teach, that doesn't happen, which is really awesome.
Yeah, the problem with marriage counseling and traditional marriage counseling is that 80% of the time it is driven by the female in the relationship. And 80% of marriage counselors out there, traditional marriage counselors, are female. So right off the bat, there is a gender bias that occurs. And yeah.
Now you got 2 women yelling at
right.
you.
I don't want to go. Why don't you want to go? Come on.
No, and that's what most guys coming into therapy, being driven by their wives feel when they come out. And the therapist ends up becoming a referee and either supporting the guy, and now the wife feels like betrayed, or supporting the wife, and now the guy feels, hey, I can never do anything right. And so, in the model that we created is I work with the husbands, Jean works with the wives, and then we come together, the 4 of us. And over the 90 days, it's a very structured process. So we're not allowing them to go back into their conflict cycle and the dysfunctional pattern. We're teaching them new ways of communicating and new ways of having productive conflict so that they can actually transform the relationship and not reinforce it.
What were you going to ask?
That he answered my question.
Okay,
I was going to ask if you guys talked to them separately and then brought them together. Do you kind of mix and match? Like, do you talk to them separately and bring them together and then separate again and together? Or is it just in the beginning they're separate?
Or do you guys talk behind the scenes and try to get a feedback?
All of the above.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
And it really depends on what we're seeing with the couple. So some people, maybe they had some big thing happen, which is getting in the way of their connection. So they need more individual work, or we do more couples work, or we do talk. And that's a really difficult thing. That's a great skill, to have information about another person that you can't divulge.
Right.
And still help them. Because if someone tells you something and the other person hasn't said it, we can't go confront that person. That doesn't work.
Right.
But we do know what's going on.
Yeah.
How do you know when they come in that they're both not just full of it? They're both not just lying and saying they're both perfect when they're both at fault. How do you?
They're both at fault.
Yeah.
It's always a 50-50.
Okay.
They just don't know it yet, because one person's stuff is more outward and one is more inward. But the inward person is allowing whatever the outward person is doing. So the correction is in both ends. So we always, and we tell them that up front. It's a 50-50. You guys are both equally responsible for the condition of the relationship.
But I'm scrolling around your website. I mean, if one is a drug addict, cheating, things like that, if one is doing all the cheating, one's doing all the drugs, how is it still 50-50?
That's the outward part, right? That would be the outward.
Yeah, she hasn't left.
Yeah, there's, that the person that's doing cheating or using drugs, they're in the spotlight, but there's still a supporting partner that is tolerating it, enabling it, contributing in some way to the condition of the relationship. So, they've got their piece. They don't have the spotlight issue that's going on, but they have their piece that's contributing to the dysfunction in the relationship.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, you usually see the person that as the victim, the one that's not cheating. The one that's cheating, you're like, oh my gosh. And the spouse that's not, you're like, oh, that poor girl, that poor guy, whatever. And you're thinking they're following the rules and that other guy or girl, whoever.
Yeah.
So yeah.
We think of relationships in terms of 4 categories that we call flags. So we have a yellow, blue, red, and green flag kind of categories. And the yellow flag is mostly the type of people we see. And yellow flags are things that erode your relationship, that erode your bond. You're not spending time together. you're overwhelmed with the kids, it's like the stresses of life, that the last thing that happens is
Lack of investment.
yeah, you're tired and you just don't work on it, right? The second one is blue flags.
Mm-hmm.
Blue flags is like code blue. You're doing things that are killing the relationship, like keeping secrets, not talking about money, having friends of the opposite gender that
You confide in.
you're confiding in about your relationship.
Yeah, it's really like the deception and separation. So it's like parallel lives, and you're living your life, the other partner's living theirs, and there isn't really any intersection in that life.
And then the red flags are the toxic ones, like you're talking about, the cheating and it's serial cheating, not a one time. Those are different, and people can recover from that. But if someone is a serial cheater or an addict that isn't in recovery or working on it, that person that you think is the victim, they need to figure out how to get out of that, for sure.
So do you guys go in with the mindset that every relationship can be saved, or some of them just a boat that's on fire and you just got to let that go in separate directions?
We never make the determination whether a relationship can be saved or not. That is not up to us. It's up to the couple.
Okay.
Right? A couple always has three choices at any point in their relationship. And that is the choice to stay. And that means tolerating and accepting everything the way it is. Choice to leave and accepting the consequence of leaving. And then the choice to change. The first two choices, you can make that on your own. The third choice requires both partners equally investing in changing. All right. We have seen couples come from most horrific of conditions and turn their relationship around 180 degrees. And we can give them the tools. It's really up to them to make it work.
We see relationships developmentally, not so much pathologically. And so all of our initial template of relationship is parent-child. And when a couple comes in, they're parent-child. That's why one looks innocent and one looks like, but they flip-flop. Sometimes she's the little girl to the controlling dad, or he's the little boy to the admonishing mom. and our goal is to teach them how to have an adult relationship. And it's something we don't know because we don't learn it. It's just not what we bump into. We get our childhood experiences and that's what we show up with. And we don't really know there's more. And as we are helping them on the individual level to do that and take responsibility for what they have control over, and to not try to control their partner, which they don't have control over, then they choose for themselves ultimately. And we'll tell them that our goal is not necessarily a relationship. It's that you become whole and healthy people. And from that place, you'll make a good decision about your relationship. And mostly they stay if they're both working on it.
I'm glad you said that relationship flip-flop like that, because I said on your podcast that I feel like a little boy when she's mad at me. And then I got to thinking, man, that probably doesn't sound good. That sounds like some weird thing, like I'm dating my mom or something. That sounds weird. But that's the game I play. I do magic for a living. I'm a little kid. I'm living my childhood dreams. I play video games with my kids. I can get on the floor and play with my kids and be in that world. But when there's adult decisions need to be made, when there's things that happen,
You're there.
yeah,
Yeah.
I can man up. Just put that on record. But I don't know.
Well, if it's any reassurance, every single couple starts out with a parent-child dynamic. Every couple. Because our first relationship that's role model to us is parent-child, right? As us as the children, our parents as the parents. And that's what we learn a template for a relationship from. And then when we get into a committed partnership, we start out with that template that we know.
So do you think that template you follow along with your mom and dad laid down, or you learn from that, or is it a 50-50? Like, let me tell you my story. So my parents, I didn't know this. My sister's 18 years older than me. My brother's 9 years older than me, and I'm the baby. Mom and dad got married. Mom was 14. Dad was 19. Dad cheated a lot on my mom. She got married. She got pregnant at 15. Apparently, dad cheated with everyone. I don't know how many partners he had. And I think when I was an infant that he was living with a girlfriend, and they came. All I know is my mom and dad were in the house, and every once in a while, I think twice that I remember, fall out yelling, just a screaming match fight, and my mom would bring up old girlfriend's name to throw in his face. That was it.
Mhm.
But boy, I never want to do that to my wife. I never want to. My dad died when I was 25. My mom died when I was closer to 40 or after 40. And till the day she died, you know, she still thought about dad cheating on her, you know, and what did she do wrong? And I never want to put that in my wife. So I'm coming from the part that I've seen that, and I never want to do that to her. Do some people, I mean, I'm sure some people fall into that's what dads do. Dads cheat, dads go out and do that. I don't know. Am I answering my own question?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you had two choices, and that was to either become a cheater also, or to seek out certainty in your relationships, right? To seek out a partner that you can also show certainty with and also receive certainty, you know, and that's a huge thing, right? Because that's what, you know, for you translates to safety and security. And each part in the relationship attracts a counterpart. So, you know, you probably have certain, you know, we could just start diving into this, but, but Natalie, you know, you have certainty issues as well, just different, right? It's like two sides of the same kind of coin.
So yeah, we learn what we see, and we learn the opposite of that. And you might see that in your siblings. Maybe they responded to all that differently, but it certainly shaped who you are and how you show up in a relationship, including it's probably a big part of why you guys work together and travel together and make sure that you're keeping that bond where it is. So there isn't that temptation. And
he always tells me, he said, just don't leave me anywhere, because what if something happens? I said, you tell them no and you walk away. You make vows. And it doesn't, I guess I don't understand it, because I didn't grow up in a house that had somebody who cheated that I know of anyway. And so him saying, I don't want to, but not saying I won't, hurts a little bit, you know? So, and we've had that discussion before. This is nothing new for him. So I'm not throwing that at him.
No.
But, you know,
so, you know, we do a lot of windshield time and a lot of talking. And she's like, will you ever cheat on me? And the most honest I can be is I hope not.
What?
Not no.
So there's a book called The Truth About Men by Daryl Frankel. And he says, in every man, us women, we don't tend to this as much. In every man is a dog and a master. And dog food is power, lust, and greed. And guys always have to battle with who's in control, the dog or the master. And we just did a podcast with another couple, and he did cheat on her. And he would say, I can't control the thoughts in my head.
Oh, gosh.
Just to add to that, the job of every man for their sons is to teach them how to be a master of that dog. And so our role modeling is really important. And if you didn't have that role modeling, then it's hard to figure out whether you have that master in place or not, right? And that's where that uncertainty comes from, right? And that makes sense. And so, you know, just like the person who grew up in an alcoholic home, it's like, that's what I learned. So I have to be kind of careful and considerate about the environment I'm around and the actions that I take, right? Because I could go down that path pretty easily. It was role modeled to me. Right. So I need to put things in place to prevent that from happening. I got to be more considerate than other people might need to.
The other thing that's really changed, you know, like when my mom got married as a 18, 19-year-old girl, you waited to get married to have sex. There was not so much promiscuity like there is today. And all those lines got very blurry. And you guys were talking about being in Vegas and your daughter being exposed to that's the choice people are making. And so what used to be.
You didn't hear that podcast, maybe. Our daughter saw women on the street with pasties on trying to get tips. She didn't see too much. I mean, it wasn't like she saw a show or anything. But yeah.
But I mean, it's gotten worse and worse over the years. You guys have probably been there more than we have. We went ones where we're like, oh, not for us. But it's everywhere. It's on your TV. It's just everywhere. And so where are those lines? And how do you decide now for yourself as a person? Because it isn't the culture anymore saying that's appropriate or inappropriate. You know, if a girl came to school when I was a kid dressed inappropriately, she got sent home. Not anymore. It's like, hey, it's your body, express yourself the way you want. And so I think it's so much more complicated and difficult for us, especially teaching children. I'm glad our kids are grown up.
Yeah.
Of those kind of things. And
Yeah.
and that's how you fireproof your marriage, right? You know where the gaps are and you fill them in.
The challenges for couples today are way more, exponentially more than past generations. You know, if we went back 50 years, there was static roles. You knew what you did as the man of the house. You knew what you did as the lady of the house. You had these roles that you had to fulfill. And it was pretty standard across your community and, you know, your immediate community. Nowadays, those roles don't exist anymore. And so there's no static roles. And so husbands and wives have to figure that out on their own now. And there's no role modeling to look to. So you have to juggle that around and figure out, and this is what I was taught. This is what I was taught. Well, what do we really want it to be? Right. Considering all the modern challenges that we're facing right now too.
I think there's also an opportunity for couples to take their relationship to a much higher level because we don't have those. You know, so now we're making more conscious choices of how are we setting this up and what do we want to feel? And I'm not just behaving like your mom. She didn't leave, did she? No, because that's what you did, you know, and you tolerated it. And, you know, now you can say, well, I don't want that to be part of our relationship. And so what do we need to do so those things don't happen? And then you're talking about those difficult things, which isn't comfortable. But then that's the bond. That's the bond that gets you to an even higher level than just the basic, we're going to set up shop together and pay the bills together and have a family. Right. But now that next level is, I want you to feel safe with me. I want you to feel like I'm your person. I want to know about you. I don't know if my grandparents for sure didn't do that. I don't think my parents did either.
just have talks, just have conversations like that.
Yeah, especially when something comes up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I took your quiz on your website just to do something beforehand. I mean, I think we passed the bar on everything. We run the business together. So she has all my emails. She has Christmas sucks because a lot of stuff on Amazon. She sees my email. She sees Amazon purchases. I see her Amazon purchases.
Right.
That's the only time it gets messed up. Then you do feel sneaky because you're asking your next door neighbor or somebody else, hey, can you buy me something? I'll pay you back. I have to sneak money from somewhere to do this, but I'm trying to lovingly give you a present. But yeah.
So it helps when your kids are older.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's, yeah. If he hit his phone for me or started doing something weird, I'd be like, what's going on? And I think the same thing with you, because he's always like, hey, hand me your phone. I'm just like, here you go. I mean, it's we know each other's passcodes. We know, that's open. Which
hashtag couple synergy approved.
Yeah.
Well, and it's not that we're sneaking up on each other. I mean, my phone's downloading a podcast, so I need to go on Facebook and do something, and I can log in on her phone. It's not that I'm checking up on her or anything like that. Right, now, my daughter is 12.
Yes.
When she's doing this, and I walk in the bedroom, and she throws her phone down and turns the screen over,
we do check.
I just grab it out of her hand. You don't do that. I don't care what you're watching. I need to see what you had.
Yeah.
So that's different. She's not doing that. So, yeah.
Well, all those sneaky behaviors, that's part of the blue flag category, right? That's where you're keeping things separate from your partner. And a lot of couples, they'll even have their finances separate, right? They'll have separate bank accounts.
And their information about their finances.
And information, like they can't access their partner's stuff. And they'll pay the bills, they'll split up bills, and they'll just, I'll take care of this, you take care of that. And there's no interaction whatsoever, you know, and that's a lot of the millennial generation actually is doing that more.
You know, and here's the tough thing. Every relationship gets stressors.
Mhm.
And when we're in pain as human beings, we have two choices. One is we can go comfort ourselves. We can take a pill, we can drink some wine, we can eat some pizza. Everything we do that immediately makes us feel better is bad for us in the long run. It'll make us sick. The other thing we can do is we can use discipline. You know, so if you hurt your back, you could take a pill, and you can go to physical therapy and get stronger and work out and heal. And so if you have anything in there when you're in the pain point in a relationship, it's really human nature to seek that path of least resistance. You're rejected by your partner and someone comes along and gives you attention. That's really difficult stuff. And so those kind of things that you guys have set up, because you're like, you know what, I don't have any secrets from you. So why? I don't have nothing to hide. Here's my phone. I don't care.
Right.
It's the stuff that we consciously are like, oh, I should hide this. We know it's wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's funny because we all should know all of these secrets. I mean, the stuff that you're given seems like common sense, but people that are in the middle of it, they don't see it. And, you know, there's a lot of, you know, the sneakiness and the hiding and the separate. And I don't know, it reminds me a lot of Natalie's health business. You know, people that are going to Burger King or something on the way home from work and then coming home and having dinner. But honey, I'm losing weight. I'm eating your diet food and I'm still gaining weight. The sneaky and the hiding and the,
What else are you doing? Obviously something's not right. Yeah.
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 And that's the comfort. They're dealing with stress. They're dealing with something and they're not confronting it.
And so we use the iceberg principle. So we use the iceberg principle with that, you know, that 15% above the water, 85% underneath the water. So the sneaking of the food and not telling the partner about it is the 15% going on above the water. What is it connected to underneath? Right? There's judgment, there's shame, right? There's guilt, there's power and control. You know, so all of those things have a deeper root, you know, in their past, in their history, and it's playing out now in their relationship. And they're either projecting onto their partner that you are this judgmental, controlling person, right? Or I'm weak and I'm insecure. I mean, there's a lot that it could be connected to. And those are the things that we help each person within the couple understand within themselves, and what are they playing out in their relationship.
Yeah, we both ballooned up over the pandemic, having twins and, you know, breastfeeding around the clock and diapers around the clock and being unemployed. I mean, you got those $5 pizzas and, you know, family style lasagnas you get for $5. And then we just ballooned up, just eating junk all the time just to comfort ourselves because we're exhausted, we're tired.
Survival mode. That's
Mhm.
all we could. That's all.
Instead of if we'd have ate right and if we would have just ate right during that period, a lot would have been easier. We wouldn't have been so
Right.
tired.
Right.
We wouldn't have been so, you know, just be exhausted 24 hours a day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Looking back on that.
Been tired because
yeah.
Out a lot, but
yeah,
it wouldn't have been as bad.
It's hard. Twins are hard.
You know, it's funny. We all say that though, like if I just would have done this, it'd be so much easier now. And there's a reason we don't, whatever that is, you know, and we all know what we're supposed to do. That's not rocket science, right? We know better nutrition. We know move your body. It's not confusing, but it's something else underneath that is like, not today. And interestingly, married couples tend to be more physically unhealthy than single people.
Yeah. I mean, have you ever heard the you get fat and happy? When you're happy in your relationship, you end up getting fat. That's what we did right before we got engaged. And then we got engaged and we both want to look good in wedding pictures, and we got that back.
Because the only thing I knew how to cook was those $5 pizzas.
But I tell you, I know for me, yes, we had the excuse, and it was a great excuse of we have no work, so we'll get the cheap stuff. But we could have gotten cheap stuff that was better for us, I'm sure. But I know for me, working on that mental relationship with food and everything was very important. And that's probably along the same lines as far as marriage, the marriage counseling and everything goes, is, you know, this is just easier to ignore it. And I don't want to work on myself. And then once they face it, they really got to work a lot of mental work, and that's hard.
I'm not trying to shoe in her health business. I'm just saying the similarities of do the work, lose the weight, and then as soon as you quit, you balloon back up. As soon as you stop going to therapy, they start fighting again, or they give it 2 months, 8 months, whatever the thing was. The similarities
That's why
are
you
there.
got to keep. That's why you have. That's what I'm saying. You have to do that mental work, or it's not going to stick.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting out of it anyway.
Yeah, it's the same thing we're talking about. It's not just changing your behaviors. It's healing what's underneath there that is driving those behaviors.
Yeah.
And sadly, it's complicated. It's complicated, the work we do, and it's complicated with our bodies because of all the chemicals and the hormones and the misinformation, huge misinformation. And what happens too, when you lose weight, you lose muscle. When you gain weight, you gain fat. And so every time you go through that cycle, that's what happened to me when I joined the Army. I did an extreme thing to get in to make weight. And then I've just dealt with that my whole life. And every time I go on something extreme, I'm more fat, less muscle, more fat. And that's just, then you go through menopause and it's a party. So it's, and I'm just learning this stuff now. I didn't know that. And now this information's available. And so it's like, don't do the extreme thing. You got to do and when you do that and you feel good, it's maintainable. When you're doing the extreme stuff, but you don't know that.
No.
Yeah.
And a lot of us want that quick fix. I think in everything and anything. What's the quickest way to get it done? What's the quickest way to lose weight? What's the quickest way to put a band-aid on our relationship so we can move forward? And it never works. So you have to do the work.
Well,
Yeah.
if you think about it too, when you have friends, what do they think? Right. So like when we were young and, getting married and all our friends were probably a lot of them single and going out and partying and doing stuff. What do you mean you guys don't go out and drink without each other? What do you, and they would put a lot of pressure on that. We're like, well, we don't think that's very healthy.
Yeah. Why don't you guys do, guys night out or girls night out or guy trips or girl trips? We don't do that. We've never done that our entire marriage.
So a lot of that stuff is normalized, and so same with drinking, same with eating. It's like, well, it seems like it's everywhere. So what is it going to hurt? And we don't really know what it hurts until we're alone by ourselves in pain.
Yeah, we never did that.
No.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
So you guys have a lot of different things going on. On your podcast that I did, you said you guys have 40 acres. It's Colorado, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Second guessing. Do people come to your place? Do you have an office, or are you doing it all over Zoom and different things like that?
So up until COVID and lockdown, we were seeing clients in the Chicagoland area, 12 hours a day or something, like every day, and in person, right? And maybe we were doing 10% of the work virtually. And then when lockdown happened, we had to send our staff home and we went 100% virtual. And that really kind of shifted things because we had to learn how to work virtually with people. And at the same time, then we really started looking at our life, and our kids had grown and were out of the house. They were never coming back to the Chicago area. And so we were saying to ourselves, why are we staying here? What was really keeping us here? And we started to really look around, and we started, we were avid hikers before that, but then COVID, pushed us outdoors and we wanted to hike even more. And we started hiking in Colorado. We started looking out here, and the lockdown helped us branch out and be able to provide services beyond just the region of the Chicagoland area in Illinois. But now we're able to provide our services and our message to the world, which was hugely important for us because now we can actually help a lot of people versus like just one couple at a time.
So did you start your podcast around the pandemic time as well? We
did.
2019.
Yeah.
Yep. And we offer a few different levels of things. So we have a weekend relationship enhancement weekend, a weekend retreat for couples, which what we found is like the individual work we do is like
intense personal training.
Yeah. But what you do, you're in it for an hour and then you're going back into your life. And so your change is a little bit different. When you come for the weekend, there's no distractions for 4 days. I mean, for 4 days, you are in it. And so what you're really doing is you're really filling up that relationship bank account. And once you feel that, because unfortunately in our work, we're asking people to do the work without them really knowing what the payoff is. And until they can feel that payoff, and it takes us about 10 weeks to get them to where they really get it, what we're trying to teach them. So it's like working out and not seeing any results. And that, but the weekend, that's like that deep dive into it where you're so immersed in it. When you come out, you fight back for that. You want that connection and that feeling and that closeness again. And so those two things are, I love doing both of those that type of work.
And I mean, we have a home study course too, where couples can do that, the kind of work at home and really understand a lot of the concepts that we're, trying to teach them. And when we work with couples intensely and personally, we have them do the home study course in conjunction with the work that we're doing with them. So, we're just trying to get that message in many different ways, for people so that they can kind of, if they want to dabble in it, great, understand the concepts a little bit more. But if they really want to jump in head first, then we have that capability too.
I had a psychiatrist, I think is what they're called. A psychiatrist? Is that who she was? A lady from England. You remember her?
Yeah.
She said that she didn't like the Zooms because, and this wasn't couples, so I can't imagine couples, but she couldn't get a feeling for the person as being, like I'm looking at my phone, like ding goes off and I'm here, or the cat walking by the camera over there, or whatever. These people, for her, she's trying to lock in with them and be there. Was there a big adjustment? Have you been able to figure that out, or is there still toughness with over Zoom?
Disconnect.
Yeah.
The only thing that I really notice is when people have kids that keep barging in. And besides that, people are pretty intense and wanting and willing to be learning what they're learning. So, it might be because it's couples, right? Because if your partner's doing it and you're not, that's probably not a good feeling. So you don't want to show up half. Okay. That's the only thing I've noticed is some people have kids that'll, distract them.
One thing I've observed is that when we were working with couples in the office, a lot of times they would come into the office, they'd feel really good after leaving, right? They like the environment makes them feel good. And then they go back to the same home where the conflict is. So change was happening a lot slower. So, and that's why we did the home study course, because we wanted them doing that work at home in their home environment. So now they're making those changes happen at home. Well, now in doing the virtual work, they're in their bedroom, they're in their living room and working with us. So the change is happening at home. On top of it, they're doing the home study course. So the majority of the work is happening in the home environment, and it starts to shift the whole dynamics there. So it did take a little bit of a shift in the way we communicate, virtually, but I think that we've been able to make that shift, and the change is still happening. Maybe
that's a really good point. And I think that when we went to mostly virtual is when we created the home study.
Yeah.
Because it was harder to do. So you could imagine if you're coming in for a session, you might be a little emotional. Well, we don't really learn very well when we're emotional. And so when we were trying to teach and they're emotional, they would come back like, you remember this? And they'd forget. Or I remembered it when you said it, it sounded like common sense, but now I can't tell you back what I heard. And so the home study course is like, what are the things that we're telling people over and over and over again that everybody needs to learn? And I think that combination is a big deal, but nothing is ever going to replace being in person. We prefer in-person work, and we miss it, but we can be very effective without it. But it does lose a little something.
And the people that do the home study group, do they normally sign up for the weekend, or is it just a small percentage of those, or that's a different clientele completely?
It's different.
Yeah, I think we found that the majority of people who are signing up for the weekend have been working with us personally.
But it's not personal. The weekend's not personal. So we've also had family members and friends and neighbors on the weekend. And we tell them we don't talk to you guys on the weekend. We teach and you guys talk to each other. So that we don't necessarily have to have been working with them for them to be on the weekend. Yeah.
Do you guys work with churches at all, with them going to their pastor and asking for help? Pastor, I mean, he can help a little bit, but you guys have the knowledge and the schooling just for that, where he's got all these other things going on. Do you guys work with churches to get clients?
You know, a lot of times the churches have their own resources that they have created. I know there's a lot of Christian-based organizations that really focus on working with the churches, and they don't really look outside, you know, of those close-knit communities. And we're not opposed to working with churches. You know, it's just, I think that they really want to make it Christian-based and Bible-based, which we don't do. Our work is not spirituality. Well, it's spirituality
It is
based,
spiritual, but it's
not
biblical.
specifically you know, Christian based type of approach.
Yeah, but if you're addicted to drugs and you're cheating on your wife, I mean, that's not very Christian of you anyway. So, I mean, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. And I think that is kind of part of it. You know, like some people will be like, well, I only want to date a Christian because then that won't happen. But it does. Because you know, you can't like force yourself, because something external is going to judge you, so you're going to behave, you know. And I think that's kind of that thought of why they want it to be so structured along those lines. And what we do, we do deal with people's beliefs, but we don't need them to believe anything in particular, but what works for them. And if you're calling yourself something but you're not living the life, yeah.
Yeah, that's anybody. Nobody's perfect.
No.
Nobody's perfect. But I'm really close.
We were just watching. We're actually planning our anniversary is in a couple of weeks.
It's on Valentine's Day.
Yep. Yeah. And we're putting our dogs into puppy school, which takes a month. So we're like, all right, we're kind of free. So we were watching this show of old Irish pubs. So we're doing a tour of Ireland to visit. There's like 24 different pubs that they did this thing on. And this one guy, he was, they do a lot of singing there and stuff. And he goes, I can't sing because God has to have one imperfection. I'd be perfect besides that. So it's like what you were saying.
My only flaw.
You got to have one.
I haven't found mine yet, though.
Oh, come on.
I can sing. Just not going to do it right now. Can you tell everybody about the billboard? I thought that was awesome. You talked about it briefly, but I want to go a little deep dive into that.
So when we first started our company, it was just the two of us working with couples. You know, we really didn't have two nickels to rub together. And at that time, this big shot divorce attorney in Chicago, in the downtown area, put up this billboard. And on one side was this scantily clad woman, and the other side, scantily clad guy. And in the middle, it said, life is short, get a divorce. And she was attorney. She got a lot of press for that. I mean, nationwide press. And she then went on to have these roaming billboards that go throughout the city saying the same message. And, you know, we felt really strongly about it, that this is the worst message to be promoting, you know, that it's so trivial, you know, marriage doesn't really mean anything. And so we put whatever money we put together, and we got another billboard, you know, on one of the major expressways going into the city. And on one side was this young married couple. The other side was an older couple that were dancing together. And in the middle, it said, life is short, your marriage doesn't have to be. And, you know, that message, we got some press for it, not as much as she did, but it was really important for us because of what we were trying to do, and what we still are trying to do is really give couples the resources out there who feel alone and are struggling. They don't know what to do. And we don't want them to think that this is how it's supposed to be. Right? Because it can be better. It absolutely can be.
And we have this natural way of feeling. And when we do the right thing, we feel good. And when we do the wrong thing, we might feel good for a few minutes, but then we don't for very long. And we see this a lot with young people. They are so disconnected socially. They don't know how to interact, and their anxiety and depression is through the roof. And the one thing that we can do for our emotional and mental wellness is be in a relationship that feels safe, that you feel like you contribute, that you belong, that you're cared for. And that makes for such a great life. It's just not, oh, I own a jet layer or something else that the world's trying to tell you is what's going to really make you happy. Because what really makes you happy is some good food and some good people to share it with.
You have those celebrities that, are 75 years old dating a 19-year-old girl or a 20-year-old girl, and they have nothing in common. Mm-hmm. They're telling about TV shows they watched, when their parents were in college, and, that's what and it's kind of sad. I mean, it's really sad. One of my favorite things in the world is just making my wife laugh. I can tell her that the craziest, silliest stuff in the world, somebody else would think I was crazy, but it's just trying to get a reaction out of her. And her laugh, I love it so much. But going back to the other thing, you guys were talking about that divorce lawyer and everything. In my mind, it's stereotypical. Like the big shot divorce lawyer is usually divorced. Is that a stereotype, or is that something I've made up?
I think there's a probably high correlation with that. That big shot divorce attorney, she was divorced.
Okay. I think too, what's really sad is that the way the system works with divorce is so utterly dehumanizing. And the people we see go through that, even if they were sort of in agreement in the beginning, the way they get riled up and the fear, this is your money, this is your safety and security in life. You're already heartbroken, and your emotions are running high, and it's really easy to have that used against you during a divorce. And I really wish they would make it harder to get married and easier to get divorced. Mm-hmm. And it should just be, a mathematical formula financially and some other stuff. So I don't know why they have to. Our friend went through a 5-year divorce.
I was curious.
100,000 plus. I'm sure you see it. And
I go through it, and the lawyer was making it last 5 years just because they had nothing left. There was nothing left to split after that. It was just, and the lawyer got it home. Yeah.
And it's really sad, and so if people are going to choose that path, I wish there was a better way. And we do know some attorneys who are trying to make it a better way, but they don't get any friction, they don't have any momentum, because it depends on both people behaving. Right. And as soon as someone gets scared and hurt, people don't behave anymore. Really brings out some things in people.
Well, just keep them going, keep them saved, show them what to do. And it's not a cure-all, fix-all. You got to put the work in. You've messed up once before, it could happen again. So put that work in. I think that's what you guys are trying to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And more important than that is, we really want people to know that there is something you can do. Because a lot of times people, they love each other, they're just not happy, and they don't know what to do. But there is help. There is stuff you can do. You can educate yourself, and you can work on it, and that it will help you feel better.
No, I mean, even if you get divorced, especially if you have kids, you have to still learn to work with each other. And so we'll tell people that, especially if they have kids, it really doesn't matter about the status of your marriage. What matters is that you guys have to be able to communicate with each other. You have to be able to not have resentment and be able to resolve conflict, for the sake of your children. So all the skills that we teach couples is invaluable.
Yeah. And it also, if you leave a relationship and you haven't learned what that person came into your life to teach you, you will attract the same lesson right back into your life. And we've all seen it. We've all seen someone do a lot of work to get out of something. 2 years later, they're in the same dynamic with a different person.
Or
And
worse.
so that's our goal too, is that, you shift that up. Like, you were talking about someone that's with an addict or a cheater. You're going to continue to attract that until you figure out why you attract that into your life to begin with. And so that to me is the greatest part about doing this work, because I believe our highest form of spiritual greatness on this planet is to be in a relationship with another person. It's hard.
Well, one of the things you were talking about divorce a second ago, that the Bruce and Demi Moore and Bruce Willis, that dynamic of them being together at birthday parties and taking pictures together and being a loving couple towards each other, although they have separate relationships. It was on the cover of every magazine. This is so weird, but that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
But I don't know anyone that's gotten divorced that are like that.
Right.
Even today.
Friendly. Yeah.
That friendly.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, we have yet to interview someone from Hollywood and their relationship, because it must be ungodly difficult to have a committed partnership where when you walk outside the house, you have to be on, you have to be a character, you have to be there for the public and very cognizant about how you behave. And then behind closed doors, now what?
Trying to be authentic when you're
how
acting
do you be
out
authentic,
there. Yeah.
right? You go on set, you are kissing another co-worker, co-actor, and then you come home to your committed partner, right? Well, how do you integrate that?
And
where do you draw the line about it?
That's 3 months at a time for 16-hour days. That's not a regular 9 to 5 where people struggle. That is 16-hour days for 3 months.
Right.
So someone else is definitely meeting your needs during that time.
I don't know about definitely, but I mean, the odds are pretty up there.
Yeah. And I'm not even talking about sexual needs, but just, that connection, that investment, like who are you around and where are you putting your energy towards?
Makeup lady. I mean, sometimes it's just as the person sitting there putting the makeup on you. Yeah.
They say that, the research shows that couples who are happy and healthy, they say that they invest 5.5 hours minimum of quality time per week with each other. That's minimum 5.5 hours, right? And that's face-to-face time. That's interacting, the two of them, without any distractions, without everybody else. If you are spending that time with someone else, a friend, it could be even the same gender friend, you are investing more in that relationship than you are with your spouse. And so there is going to be a consequence for that.
So that you guys can probably tell how 5.5 hours, you guys are probably at, like 100 and something. And, and when we ask a couple, that's one of the first questions we ask them is how much quality time you guys spend together? Maybe an hour a week, if that. A lot of them say 0, and the kids are all they don't get away from their kids. There's so many people involved, and then there's screens when there's not other people. And so it's a big part of that's that yellow flag of there's just no investment in the relationship.
Yeah. No, yes. And that's why I like our date nights. We try and do it once a month, and it's just nice, uninterrupted time. Because even though we can have one-on-one time at home, you never know when there's going to be a kid bursting, hey mom, asking a question. So it's kind of nice to have that no interruption time, once a month.
But I thought it was silly when she was asking, and eventually she really started asking, and I'm poo-pooing it because we had a 10-year-old daughter, a 9-year-old daughter. Right. When I'm going out to dinner, we're just going out to dinner. All right. Well, now I want to go out to dinner with you. But can't we take the baby? Why get a babysitter? Just, we're going out to dinner, and that's all it was. It wasn't like a romantic date night. It was just, but to her, she needed that. So it was like, now we have the twins, and it's like, all right, well, we have a live-in babysitter. We have this, everything's set up. if that makes you happy, honey. And she's loving it. And you know what? It's fine. It's fine. I don't mind at all. I love her. I'll do it.
You know, the other thing that's really, really important is it teaches your kids some really important things, that they're okay without you, that they can tolerate their own emotions and self-soothe and all that kind of stuff. Because you see that more too. Kids aren't leaving their parents, and they're not engaging in a relationship with a peer, and they're sort of not maturing in that way. I mean, probably when you guys were kids, certainly when we were kids, you went out and played. And if you had an altercation with another kid, you figured it out. Otherwise, you both got in trouble, right? And now kids are totally controlled. They're in a controlled sport, or the play dates are supervised by adults or something. There's always an adult around, and they don't know how to interact without that. And
we
so
moved
when
down
you
here
leave
to
them,
have 5 acres, and I kicked my daughter out the back door, and she comes right back in. And I'm kicking her out. Go play. She comes right back. She can't figure it out, and I'm like, that's not good.
yeah.
Yeah, you got to be on your own. You got to learn, make some memories, and climb some trees, and have fun, and meet the neighbor kids. And
She's getting better at it, though.
she's getting better.
She's getting better at it. Yep.
So anyway, you guys have so much going on, though. Couplessynergy.com. You can book there. The relationship. You can book the relationship weekends, relationship 101 study course, bliss products. We didn't even get into. That's a whole nother category. I just saw that and I said, hey, I got to write that down. But
That's really good stuff.
the podcast and everything else, you guys got so much going on. You are so awesome. I really enjoy you guys as a couple. Like when you guys come to DC,
yes,
come on, I want to get together.
Yeah.
You guys are awesome. Thank you guys for
Absolutely.
the podcast. Is there anything else you guys want to plug or promote before we wrap everything up?
Not right now. I mean, we are going to be publishing a book this year, so
we don't have a title yet.
Yeah, it's with our editor right now, so that's something down the line. So look out for that.
Awesome. Well, we have a podcast group, so send us pictures, and when that comes out, send that to me, and I'll promote it on the podcast group as well.
Sounds
Guys,
awesome.
Thank you so much for being on. Only thing we have left to say is see you next week. Check us out online at wesisley.com and patreon.com/Wes_Isley for behind-the-scenes videos, blooper videos, never-before-seen footage, discounts on merchandise, magic trick tutorials, and more. That's Wes Iseli, spelled WESISELI.